It's a growing trend for states looking for ways to trim budgets. To date, at least 28 states have privatized prison health care, and private companies are rewarded for keeping costs down. A report out this month from the American Friends Services Committee in Arizona found that since the state privatized its prison health care, medical spending in prisons dropped by $30 million, and staffing levels plummeted. It also found a sharp spike in the number of inmate deaths. 50 people died in Arizona Department of Corrections custody in just the first 8 months of this year. Compare that to 37 deaths in the previous 2 years combined.
Some people just believe that the government is the only one who should care for these people.
State Representative John Kavanaugh wrote the legislation privatizing prison health care. We asked him whether he thought it had put inmates in danger.
People die in prisons. I receive a lot of handwritten notes from prisoners. I receive emails from prison families with all sorts of allegations of crazy behavior. And you call the prison people up, and they usually have a reasonable explanation for it.
I spoke to a woman yesterday on the phone who's currently in the female correctional facility in Goodyear, and she just gave birth inside that prison, had a C-section, the wound opened up, and the doctor there took sugar packets from McDonald's and poured them inside of her wound to try to make sure that it would heal faster. Does that sound like adequate health care to you?
That doesn't sound like a true allegation. That sounds ridiculous. Prisoners have 24/7 to think up allegations and write letters. I'm not saying that that some of them can't have a basis in fact, but you got to take them with a grain of salt, or in the case of the hospital, maybe a grain of sugar.
So who's going to listen to that prisoner, though? That woman that gave birth there, how can she actually try to prove that allegation? She's in a prison, she's given birth, and she's only there with a couple of staffers. Who's going to listen to her?
There's no shortage of prison advocacy groups and ACLU attorneys who at the drop of a dime will file a lawsuit.
So you don't put a lot of credit into this class action lawsuit?
I think the class action lawsuit is the biggest scam to the public. I think most people who get into them wind up with nothing, and the lawyers walk away in limousines with their trunks full of cash.
They were planning a wedding reception and stuff when he got out.
We spoke to one family now suing Wexford, the private healthcare company Arizona first contracted. Jamie and Jenna Brown are the daughter and widow of Tony Brown, an inmate who died last year.
Tony was a good guy. He was a gentleman as far as he held your door, and he was nice and funny. We laughed and laughed.
Brown was serving a 10-year sentence for aggravated assault and was due to be released this year. Jenna says she was looking forward to having her dad back.
Yeah, they were supposed to come down for Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah.
They were going to come. He never got to meet my husband, and he wasn't there when I got married, so they were going to come visit.
Brown was diagnosed with esophageal cancer while he was in prison. His medical records show it was in remission, but he had been prescribed morphine for the ongoing pain. But in October of 2012, the prison ran out of morphine, so the medical staff switched him to Lortab, a weaker painkiller. America Tonight obtained video shot by prison guards showing Tony Brown just after he was put on that new medication. Brown's medical records show that guards told nurses his condition was worsening, clearly seen in the second video shot less than a day later.
Brown, can you pull yourself up onto the bed?
But there's no record of medical staff examining him.
Inmate Brown, I spoke with your wife earlier today. Can you communicate with me, please?
The prison chaplain does see him, though, the next day, only after Jamie asked him to check on her husband.
I'd like to talk with your wife later on today. Is there something I can tell her?
Because since I've been here, since 7, they have...
2 days after Brown first started complaining of pain, medical staff have still not examined him, so the guards intervene.
Lieutenant Corona made it at this time. I'm assuming command of face-to-face with Sergeant Sawyer replacing inmate Brown on the floor.
Medical staff finally enter Brown's cell, but 40 minutes pass before they realize no one has called an ambulance.
On site? 911's on site?
When the ambulance arrives,
Ready, guys? On three. 1, 2, 3.
Brown is immediately taken to the hospital, where a day later he suffers a heart attack and dies. The county medical examiner's office found that Brown died of complications from cancer.
He may have been a prison inmate, but my dad was no different than the governor or you or me, you know, or your dad. He did have a family, he did have a child, and he did have a wife, and he had plans.
2 days after Tony's death, Jamie says she finally received a call back from that private health care provider, Wexford.
My husband passed away on Monday, and I got a call from Wexford Medical on Wednesday, wanting more information so that they can make sure he's seen. And I was pretty upset because I was like, what are you talking about? He's dead.
Wexford's attorney told us its employees acted appropriately and that further investigation will prove there was no wrongdoing. But there are signs the company was aware there were problems with the care it was providing. America Tonight obtained a copy of a PowerPoint presentation written by top Wexford executives for a meeting with the Arizona governor's office in November 2012. It warns that the care is, quote, not compliant with constitutional requirements, and that the current class action lawsuits are accurate. It recommends an overall operational cleanup, staffing reassessment, and the appointment of a governor's office liaison. 4 months later, Arizona severed ties with Wexford. The state awarded the 3-year, $369 million contract to Corizon, the largest prison healthcare company in the country.
Corizon understands the importance of a careful balance between resources and resourcefulness.
But Corizon has faced allegations of wrongdoing as well. In the last 5 years, the company has been sued for malpractice 660 times, according to the Miami Herald.
We've seen time and time again abuses of money, abuses of power.
Arizona Democratic House Minority Leader Chad Campbell says the legislature did not properly vet the company before signing the contract.
Didn't those lawsuits in other states raise some red flags? Maybe we need to take a look at this company?
You would think it would have, but what actually happened, the current company that got the contract didn't even have to go through a public process of any kind to get this contract.
No bid?
No bid, nothing. It was deemed an emergency situation by Department of Corrections, so they didn't have to go through the normal process. But more interesting than that was this company that got the contract had just hired the former head of Department of Corrections, who was the mentor of the current head of Department of Corrections.
Campbell says that's not the only tie that members of Arizona's state government have to private prisons. Governor Jan Brewer's former campaign strategist, Charles Coughlin, runs a lobbying firm called High Ground Public Affairs Consultants. It represented one of the country's largest private prison companies. High Ground donated $5,000 to Jan PAC, Brewer's super PAC. The governor's office declined a request for an interview and instead referred us to John Kavanaugh.
There are allegations that Governor Jan Brewer went ahead and accepted these bids because of personal relationships. How do you respond to those allegations?
I think they're baseless. I think they're propaganda. People say to me, I've gotten campaign contributions from private prison people. Well, yeah, I got from a lobbyist who represents them, but that lobbyist also represents 40 other clients in different industries. It's smoke and mirrors, it's a facade.
Somebody's profiting on it. Multiple people are profiting on it, multiple corporations. They're profiting on taxpayer dollars. And to me, if I'm going to hand out money to a private entity, I want to make sure it's being spent wisely.
Should there be an investigation?
There should be, and we're trying to figure out how to initiate that.
Corizon also declined a request for an on-camera interview, but told America Tonight their care meets constitutional requirements, and that since it took over, it's increased staff and doubled the number of infirmary beds, all while saving taxpayers money. Still, allegations of wrongdoing continue to mount. According to the AFSC report, an inmate at the Whetstone unit of the Arizona State Prison Complex tested positive for tuberculosis in August. But the report says Corizon did not test other prisoners, even those who were out in the local community doing community service. As for Reagan, she still has 6 months left in prison.
Ready, go!
The separation has been tough on the family, but what's worse is their fear that for Reagan, prison health care could be a death sentence.
All right, I'm going to lose you, so just, I love you, honey.
Are you coming on Saturday?
I am coming on Saturday with Rylan. You don't.
Thank you for using.
I love you, honey. Bye-bye. Oh, that's so frustrating when you can't finish talking.
It's got to be tough when you hang up.
Yes. It's even tougher leaving. Her first visit with Rylan, my husband, held Rylan up, and she could just see Rylan's big blue eyes, and she just started running and grabbed her and held her as tight as she could. It's been very hard. We all miss her very much.